Shukai!
Hello, this is Shukai, and I am your usual host, Kevin, and I am joined by.
It's me, your boy, Martin. I'm back. Hello.
Definitely, this episode is going to be very special as we were invited to watch the opening film night of Animations Film Fest 2023. And again, thank you for inviting us to even come to this opening night and watch the wonderful return of Hayao Miyazaki, The Boy and the Heron. First off, just some impressions of The Boy and the Heron. Like in Japan, you know that this got zero marketing, right? And it topped in the Japanese box office for several weeks in a row. So
I mean, that I didn't know. I didn't know that I got zero marketing. But if Miyazaki, after like I don't know, God knows how long, it was the last film when Rises came out in like 2012, and he comes back and saying, "I'm going out of retirement. This is my next new film." I'm pretty sure that's all he really needs to say, and everyone's gonna be like, "I'm watching that." Like guaranteed. That's all he needs to do. He's like, I'm done taking a break, never doing this again. I changed my mind. I'm doing it. And yeah, you're just gonna want to see his last final work before, I don't know, maybe 5 years down the line, he's gonna say, I have another piece of work to do again. That's just Miyazaki's thing at this point. He's just never ending. But yeah, I'd be down to see that. Once I don't even need to know what about. I'm just gonna go out to the theaters and see his film.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if Western release is going to be the same as well, because I feel like we do live in an age where trailers does define everything. So I don't know if we're actually going to get that treatment. It's just like, hey, Miyazaki's film is out in the theaters. That's it. No video, no nothing. No banners, no poster, no nothing. just go watch it.
I guarantee you, we're gonna have a swarm. Just that's it.
Oh man.
They're gonna see his name plastered on like on the freaking marquees out at theaters, and everyone's like, "Oh my god, it's another Miyazaki film! Like he directed it. So we gotta go see it. We gotta go see it." And boy, was it a treat! Like y'all need to go watch it. It was really good.
Yeah, so definitely my some of their impressions from The Boy and the Hare was overall very positive, considering that this is return of Miyazaki's film. But first, before this film even came to place, he did try to do an original proposal pitch, which he was trying to say that, hey, I did know that I was trying to come out of retirement, but you know what? I'm a stubborn old man, and if I'm gonna do it at a slower pace, then I'm gonna do it, So this exact quote here is what his pitch was. So after reading what his pitch has to offer, what do you make out of some of his words here and some of the way he phrases these things?
Definitely, you could kind of get the fact that he's just a little, like you could still a little bit of his pride is kind of putting on the stake here, considering he was going on like, oh, it's really pathetic that hey, I'm done, I'm retiring, no more films. Last film I ever did is the last one. That's it, y'all. Peace out. And he comes back and he's just kind of like, oh, you said you were. He's thinking like people are gonna be like questioning him, like you said you're done and you're coming back out. You're like, why are you doing this? Are you just bored? Are you or like why exactly are you going back and making this new film? But definitely from what I'm taking from his opening pitch here, so he's just like he as he's sitting there in retirement. Yes, I guess maybe he's bored or stuff, but he came up with this idea and he had to continue and he built upon it. And obviously as he's going here, he says it takes time, and especially now that he's much older, it's taking even longer for him to make it. But in the end of the day, I mean, you got to commend him. You got to commend him that he committed and pushed through to completing his film and just went out and did it.
Yeah, so I feel that especially with some of these words that Miyazaki chooses to focus onto here, definitely one of them I do want to kind of mention, or not one, but like several, was that when he was 40, he would have been done with this. Like he would have been pumping out feature films left and right. But now he's 75, and it does take a lot much more longer to get there. I feel that Miyazaki is definitely the man who really cares about the results more so than the duration of or how much effort it needs to complete the product, which is why even though he says that in 2013, The Wind Rises, his final movie. The time gap between that movie and the previous movie he was credited for was 3 years, or not even 3 years. It was 2 years. He was credited for being a writer for it. Even it, The Wind Rises, it was 2 years, and then from The Wind Rises all the way to The Boy and the Heron, it was 10 years. You can definitely know that Miyazaki, as long as he gets there, he wants to get the job done. He wants to get his creativity out there. Even if it's frustrating that, it's like, I know I said I'll retire, but that's because I was getting old. But I'm old and I'm still going to get this done, you know?
And just continuing on what I was saying earlier, like he that it's commendable that he's just going to commit to it. As he even mentions that like this, it takes him that much longer to put together. And one of his quotes is mentioning that he may have started this production of a film, and then it takes 3 years down the line before he could finally release it. And he doesn't even know if the actual social climate is accepting of the film now, or if this is the kind of film people want to see. And to him, it's more of an interest for him to see like how society is going to change, and to the point of like how they're going to perceive what were his thoughts way back then, like 3 years ago. In this, or in this case with The Wind Rises and The Boy of the Heron, it's a total of 10 years. So it's that big of a gap. Like came up, like within that, let's say he came up with the film 2 years, maybe 2 years after The Wind Rises, or I don't know exactly when he started it, but then that's such a long time to like start the development and to finally release it. That he's right. The every what people want would have been completely different than when he first came up with the idea.
Yeah, I definitely agree, which is why that shift, there's just definitely that almost a full generation gap between The Wind Rises and The Boy and the Heron. And it's kind of like, well, if The Boy and the Heron was back then, would it have the same effect that it does now? And I feel that it's impossible to have that kind of statement and still be relatively okay with it. Um, but yeah, so definitely this is so especially with this quote here, like in times like these, when making a film that takes 3 years to complete, what kind of shape should it take? How much of it do you need to change of the film to be much more relevant in today's world, into the modern society? And should it change it towards that? He doesn't know. We don't know because there's not really a right answer for this. But yeah, so that was his entire pitch of doing the Boar and the Heron, and which does lead to, again, we're gonna keep referencing that 10 years. We should just like put this like 10-year counter
Oh
at the
yeah.
bottom of the screen right here.
Just right there. Just like don't forget. Like y'all, this took him 10 years. So there's a lot of time and self-contemplation there.
Mhm. So definitely for that 10-year kind of gap going on, there's there's something about this film, The Boy and the Heron, that's so drastically different from his other works, but still be able to retain that Miyazaki spirit. Like, a lot of it was definitely very different, and it's also very colorful as a Miyazaki art style in itself.
It's definitely given me, compared to his last film where The Wind Rises, that it was if anything, The Wind Rises is actually one of the most grounded films as he's ever made from his list, like such as Spirited Away, Howl's Moving Castle. I feel like The Boy and the Heron definitely fits more in a category of the whimsical side, such of Spirited Away and and Howl's Moving Castle. It's definitely a step different from The Wind Rises, but it's still good. Like it's not, it doesn't necessarily make it bad. It definitely helps his sense of the direction that he went with it definitely helped push the kind of story that he wanted to tell.
Yeah, so definitely I feel that a lot of this artistic choices with his animated motion is definitely the feeling of it's happening all so fast, and how do you animate that and still be within the 2D realm of space without relying on computers or 3D CGI or any of that sort. So this is definitely one of the much more experimental art techniques I've seen from a Miyazaki film, where it's much more it's like everything's happening so fast, and everything else the character is seeing around him is that much of a blur, you know. So I feel that it's kind of like it's almost an Alice in Wonderland esque kind of thing. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, there's a lot of a lot of the artistic choices that they did with this film definitely had a lot more thematical meaning and meanings behind it, especially the fire scene at the beginning of the movie. The way he drew out the fire definitely played more again with the actual direction of the storytelling he was going for, and it just like resulted in, as you were saying, the kind of like whimsical Alice in Wonderland kind of feel.
Whenever we talk about this film, it's almost impossible to not compare to his previous works as well. But definitely in the current times, it's still reminiscent of the Miyazaki style, but it's not just the usual Miyazaki style. It's him going off in his own experiments, and I have a very positive feeling for it. Like I, to be truthful, I am not the biggest Miyazaki fan. I can appreciate the impact that he has made into the anime culture and to the animated film culture itself, but it's not something that I would completely like rave about. But this film is definitely one that's like, wow. To say that I can recognize this, it be Miyazaki, but not have it do Miyazaki things as usual, really tells you a lot of how he's not adapt, but how he's willing to experiment and expand to even territories he hasn't done before.
Granted, as much as we're saying too that he's done a lot of things different with his film. There's still some things that are key iconic Miyazaki. Like if you're the sort of person here that watches those Miyazaki films to see all the good food animations that he's done, that makes you like really like want to eat food. Like he still has plenty of that. Like the food animations here are just always on top. Like you're gonna enjoy it for that as well.
Dropping down to the meat, to the meat of this
I can't believe you
conversation.
did this. I can't believe you did this. Oh my god.
So it so at first I had a very hard time trying to distinguish what kind of story the boy and the heron is trying to tell, because again, there's just that Alice in Wonderland esque kind of motion and like navigating, powering through the plot line, and it's so interesting because this is somewhat of a biography of Miyazaki and of his own experience, but at the end of the day, it just shows that the world itself is a naturally unforgiving creature, no matter how it's presented, right? It could be
Mhm,
presented as a very colorful theme. There's all these different aspects of the world that is always going to be out to try to tell you exactly what to do.
mhm,
And there is a lot of different choices where you can do with it, where you can either try to say, yes, I'll do it, or no, I'll defy it. But it's so interesting to see that there's that middle ground of just like, hey, I'm gonna do my thing, but I can still reject your ways, but also be able to obey what the laws of nature has in store for me, what the ways of life has in store for me. And it's so weirdly relatable
mhm,
because again, it's always just that, hey, you're dealt with these cards. It sucks. It really, really sucks. And people around you are going to keep telling you what to do every single time,
mhm.
but it's up to you to determine those people who are telling you, saying that are they worthy of you reciprocating that command, or should you just take it onto your own reins and just say, hey, this is wrong or this is right because it is my definition of it. So
Mhm. Yeah, I definitely get that sense of feeling there too, and it's just again relating to the allegories that like Alice in Wonderland is trying to portray, and that's the more now that you more speak about it, the more I definitely see relation between the two, and it's also how I also perceived it. Like the story that he's trying to push here is also more of like just like like just trying to heal from the traumas from the main character that's trying to encountered. Um, Definitely, he's very recluse. He's closed off from everyone else, and through the course of the story, you see him kind of open up, and even kind of like, and as you pointed out, he's taking a stance on his own. He's making his own choices of what he wants to do, whereas before he was just kind of going along with emotions at the beginning because he was just broken. And as he steps out, he's kind of uh breaking out of his box and just understanding that although what happened to him was tragic, he doesn't have to just lose himself. He could there's still a lot more going on with his life. Even after like he's trying to take this all on himself on his own, and he's all by himself as the story continues. We've also noticed that as he's opening it up, it's mainly because he's making all these friends along the way that after, and I think it makes, I don't want to spoil too much with the story because like, but to summarize it, this traumatic event happened to him and he just doesn't want to open up his heart to anyone anymore. He doesn't want to get that same hurt, and you kind of see it. But as he's making all these friends, and he has to because he doesn't know how to move forward, or he's getting stuck based on like of the adventure that he's trying to go through. He's making these connections, these bonds, and from having closed off his heart, and now that he's forced to open up, he's healing that sense of hurt that he was feeling at the beginning, and now he can make his own choices instead of just like going through the motions and doing what is expected of him, as you'll see when you see the movie.
So definitely, this is a very different kind of story of what Miyazaki usually tells with his previous works again. But it's still a very welcoming kind of story where a lot of it is fresh as it should be. It's been 10 years since his previous film.
Yeah.
But yeah, so overall, hopefully those are our interpretations of it without spoiling too much of the movie. I think this is definitely one of the spectacles that's you haven't seen in a very very long time, just because a lot of time has been put onto it and a lot of effort and dedication to see this push through its final stretches, to its final productions, and now that's here. So definitely some of the closing thoughts of The Boy and the Heron. Like I said before, I'm not the biggest fan of Miyazaki, but
I
I can still appreciate this film, but without being too much of a, grumbling Miyazaki hater. Hee hee
You're a
hoo hoo
hater.
hoo.
You're a hater. I mean, the guy, like, the thing is, we say we shouldn't be a hater to Miyazaki, but the thing is, Miyazaki also hates a lot of things. Like, bruh. It's like, I think, but I don't know. It's his hate, his disdain for a lot of things actually inspires him to make amazing works of art. I don't know that if people know the meme where like the other like Ito, like horror manga artist, and he's like he makes these like scary, horrifying things, but then he's like a kitten when you meet him in person. Miyazaki makes these whimsical wonderlands, and you think he's gonna be like amazing, like happy-go-lucky guy, and you meet him in person, he's very he's very bitter.
He's a bitter old man who just doesn't want to socialize with people. Hey Miyazaki, did you know? What do you think about the new anime? I don't fucking give a shit. Get the fuck out of my face.
So I understand what G here is saying with his like kind of like I don't really like Miyazaki, but to great credit where it's due, like this movie is really really good. It's really it's up there. It's probably up there with the likes of, in my opinion, like Howl's Moving Castle. I don't know if it exactly beats Spirit Away, but it's definitely a fun ride.
Mhm.
But there's also a lot of things that are going on that to the point you're kind of, and you got this too, right? You kind of got lost in the film
Oh,
at some point, right?
definitely. It's that
Oh yeah,
Alice in Wonderland effect it's got going
yeah.
on.
You're it's which isn't a bad thing. There's films that does tries to do this where you're getting lost and it just doesn't make sense anymore. But it's just as Gio is saying, and I feel like we've mentioned this so many times. It really feels like an Alice in Wonderland sort of situation to the point where you're just going along for the ride. And I think the main thing you need to focus on isn't exactly what's happening on the screen, but like what is this lesson that the main character is trying to learn and go through here. What is he getting out of all of this? And you definitely get that
Mhm.
from what you're seeing.
Yeah, definitely. That was The Boy and the Heron at its US premiere before any other theaters. As for when this theater will be released to a wider audience, it will be revealed much later on down into the line. But definitely, when you do hear The Boy and the Heron and you do hear the word Miyazaki right next to it, please just kind of cast away of what you know about Miyazaki and just enjoy the ride. Again, thank you so much for Animations Film Fest and letting us watch this very unique way of how Miyazaki can portray his art still to this very day. This has been Shukai. Kevin here.
And it's, again, your secondary host, Martin.
And until next time,
Peace.
10 years!